No. Yeah, they start out. to the big down the field throws, and his accuracy today is on display. And it actually, one of my favorite things from today, I starred this in my notes here. He had, I think it was a deep corner to Terry in one of these team periods, and he missed him. And he had to try to throw the ball up and away because the safety was coming over top, but Terry's got the speed. He beats the corner. He beats the safety. Forbes was out there, and might have been Quan.
It was Quan.
Yeah. And so Terry's Terry. He gets out there, and Jaden misses him. And they come back to the sideline, and they have a pretty like in-depth conversation about it. And it's clear like they're both kind of gesturing. And it wasn't so much that like Terry was lecturing Jaden or Jaden was lecturing Terry. Like it was just, hey, we got to get on the same page. They did. I couldn't hear the conversation, just a lot of hand motion, and they were very intentional about what they're doing. And about 2 series later, I think it was, maybe it was 4 series later in practice, similar throw, similar route. This one I think was a go ball, and Jaden hits him in stride. And you're just like, damn, where has that been? Jaden's willingness to throw the ball outside the numbers, deep, the accuracy with which he does it. He clearly has a great ability to see and kind of visualize. Like I talk about this sometimes when I'm talking about Steph Curry. Like Steph has an innate ability to realize how far away things are and put a ball there. It's why he's a great golfer. It's why he's a great three-point shooter. It's silly. Like even when he's messing around, I saw a video the other day of him just like at this charity event, and he's walking out, the ball like rolls to him, and he throws a hook shot over his head from 40 feet out, and he drains it. And you're just like, this dude is an alien. I think I saw a meme of that, and it was like, don't tell me God doesn't have favorites, because Steph just boop. And I don't know whether Jaden would be the sharpshooter that Steph Curry is in the NBA. That seems unlikely. But clearly Jaden's like depth perception, hand-eye coordination, and his ability to put touch on a football is next level. And you see it in these practices. Now, it's one thing to do it in a practice versus when you know you're about to take a shot and get hit and all the football caveats that go in with it being July. But you saw that on display today. And I think, Anthony, something that we were talking about in the break that you really noticed is not just, hey, in rhythm, in the pocket, drop a dime, but he had a couple throws today on the move that were special as well.
Yeah, being able to get outside of the pocket and extend the play was super impressive. And it's also the accuracy which he has, when he does get outside the pocket. He hit Jahan 2 times on the sideline. One time, it was a simple throw where Jahan's like by himself. But then there was another time where he had to actually loft the ball over top of the defender and still get it to Jahan in between 2 other defenders. So it was just, his accuracy when it comes to getting outside of the pocket is really impressive, because he's also just not looking to run. We know he can run, but I think in these practices, we definitely rather see him, dial it up and zip it into one of his receivers. The other thing that I did...
Well, just real quick on that before we get on to another point. If I ask people before camp, like, who do you think will run the most? Marcus, Jeff Driscoll, Sam Hartman, or Jaden Daniels? Maybe someone would have guessed Marcus or Driscoll or whoever, but no one would have guessed that Jaden would be dead last. He has not run the football basically at all. And to your point, when he gets out of the pocket, he finds stuff. And his ability to keep his eyes downfield, whether it's looking back across the formation for a guy like Ertz, whether it's, the throw he made to Jahan on that deep comeback is just stupid. Like it's almost straight out of a drill, which like, good job, Cliff and Tavita and Brian Johnson, whoever else is involved in coming up in the drills. But they've worked on some of these throws where they've got to get it up over a target and then back down. So you go up over a linebacker and back down. But they've done that mostly from a, like, hey, can we hit a guy on the back line of the end zone? This is 20 yards up over a jumping DB into Jahan. Has to be perfect. Jahan is mid-toe tap on the sideline as he brings it in. Just one of the better throws that you'll see anywhere across the NFL all season long. And Jaden just kind of, casually does it. No stress. No, I'm going to start just calling him. Now I feel like I'm Linnell giving people nicknames. I'm not giving him a nickname, but he's just no stress Daniels. He's just out there chilling, making plays. It's what he does.
Yeah, he's out there definitely delivering. And my thing is, I missed, I guess, Monday. That was the first day in pads. I wish I was there. They said he was on and off, but I think he had an extremely good day today. Even on like some of his misses, he had Jahan one-on-one on the left sideline, and he put the ball literally where only Jahan could get it. It didn't result in a catch, but the fact that, he's taking those steps and he's allowing his playmakers to go out there and be able to, make plays. I think that's what we've been missing. Like, just give the guys a chance to go out there and make a play.
And the anticipation he throws with. There's another deep comeback to Jahan where it's a back shoulder situation. And, like, I was watching Jahan on the play. Sometimes you get lucky. You know, how many times have I said during this camp, like, I don't know exactly what happened because I was watching here and then all of a sudden the ball's there and, it turned out pretty good. Good analysis. Thanks, Hoffman. But, like, this is one where I was watching Jahan on the route. And I tried to watch Jahan a little bit more today, and it was pretty easy because the ball went his way quite a bit. But Jahan is like, it's not even that he hadn't made his break yet. It's that he made like a 2-step move at the top of his route where he's like, oh, I'm about to go, like, from I'm running to I'm about to turn this thing up into a vertical route, big acceleration step, and then huge deceleration, come back shoulder. And so there's kind of that 2-step, and Jahan hadn't done the first part of that yet at the stem or the top of his route, and Jaden throws the ball. And he knows, and sure enough, Jahan turns around, bang, it's right there, catch, and it's a diving catch for Jahan on the sideline. And it's crazy because I wonder if it's predetermined there, because I thought Jahan got on top of the DB. Like, I thought Jahan could have gone deep, and Jaden reads it out the same exact way Jahan does, or it's predetermined, and Jahan just does a really good job of selling the vertical route. So, yeah, man, like, the touch, the anticipation, the mobility, again, does it? I always feel like I have to caveat this because I don't want to be accused of like, oh, they're just lapping up everything. Jaden Daniels is a guy. He's not. He had some stuff he missed today. There was a fumbled exchange, although I think that one was on the running back, in fairness to Jaden. Like, it's not perfect. There's some times where he's taken some pressure today that maybe may have been sacks. And, if you make a play after you've been sacked in training camp, it's a sack for real in a real game. The second play doesn't matter as much. But dang, the test that he's had to take so far, he's done really well on, and just the poise he's shown while doing it, I think is impressive. What was the other thing? Was that the other thing, like the anticipation part of it, or was there something else that you had from camp today?
Nah, I think the anticipation, we've hit on. I was going more so go towards the defense side of the ball, just in the red zone. The fact that we had Luvu at the end. I think in those situations, from the looks of it anyway, because Bobby Wagner, he wasn't out there, but it looked like they had 3 safeties, Luvu at end, a linebacker. It just, again, the possibilities that they have, and also just wanted to have your best players out there. So the fact that Luvu is at the end, can also drop in coverage, have somebody. It's just, I don't know, I'm loving it. Even though they end up getting scored on like 2 plays later, but they still got some work to do.
Yeah. No, I loved seeing the different personnel, and in that situation you had, or the 2-minute, not the red zone, in the 2-minute situation.
2 minute, that's what it was.
Well, for the defense, the one defense, it was kind of the same because it was the high red area, but it's really like a 2-minute package because they want the pass rush. They're not concerned about a run game. They're not concerned about whatever. But they had Luvu on one edge, Fowler on the other. And then they had Sainer still in. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting too is Percy Butler was in. And so we talk about the mixing and matching of the safeties, and who knows, again, they can all change this up. Nothing's final. They're trying stuff. But I do think on some of the situational stuff, we're seeing a little bit more into the depth chart than we are in other parts of practice. And I think Butler over Chin there is for real. Because they want the speed and kind of the range versus Chin's ability to stop the run and do things underneath. They want to make sure they don't get beat over the top. And so the fact that Quan is still in there tells us a lot about what they think of Quan. And Butler is the other safety, I think, is telling as well with Sainer still. And then today it was Forbes and Davis on the outside. St. Juice left practice early with an injury. So we'll obviously follow up on that on Thursday with Dan Quinn after the off day tomorrow. Okay, that is a look at practice today. We'll talk more about it coming up at 6 o'clock in our Pick 6 at 6. But coming up next, it is time to check in with Chelsea Janes, Washington Post Major League Baseball writer, on what the Nats and O's are doing ahead of the 6 p.m. baseball trade deadline. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we got less than 90 minutes till Major League Baseball's trade deadline. But yet, by some miracle, on the phone with us now to talk about it is Chelsea Janes of the Washington Post. Chelsea, we've survived the breaking news. I've jinxed the hell out of this interview, but here we are, 90 minutes until the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's running around, but yeah, I'm here.
Here we are. So let's get as much info and analysis and insight from you while we can before your phone blows up with something that you have to go report on. And let's start with what the Nationals have done so far. Last night, the big deal for Lane Thomas. Why does Washington do this now? He still has another year of club control remaining, but they ultimately pull the trigger on this deal. What are they getting back that was worth it to them to be sellers of this variety at the deadline this time around?
You know, I think with Lane in particular, and we've also kind of heard this, Mike Rizzo has said, look, like, we're not going to sell this guy unless the people buying him treat him as an everyday player, as like a free win player, a guy who is a 2020, not a platoon guy. And if they got someone who was going to treat him that way, they were going to make the deal, because you're never going to get more for him than you are now when you've got a playoff run and a whole season of control. The Guardians handled him that way. I think you can see that in the 3 prospect return. They got a big pitcher, I think a former second-round pick that there's a lot of reason to believe in. So, I think the time was just right, and they found someone that valued him the way they did, and so they pulled the trigger. But, it's a seller's market, and, I think there still could be more to come from them at this point.
What names are you watching at this point for the Nationals as, we sit here 86 minutes to go until the trade deadline?
Yeah, I think Dylan Floro and Kyle Finnegan are the obvious ones. Neither, and especially Finnegan, sort of fits the traditional mold in terms of, elite stuff that you see teams look for. But at this point, if there's a team that needs relief help, those are 2 obvious guys that are still on the market. And, I think Riz is probably going to be, getting information about and seeing what he can get for either of them. Finnegan, again, has another year of control left. So if you end up keeping him, not getting what you want, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But, if there is a taker, this is the time to sell. We've seen pretty crazy returns for relievers and starters around the game. So if you have them to sell, you got to explore it. And, we'll see in the next 90 minutes whether they get something for them. But I would expect at least one of them to go, if not both.
Chelsea Janes, Washington Post, with us. Finnegan had a rough outing last night. Does that, how much does any single performance, especially if it's the last one before the deadline, affect the value of a player, if at all?
I don't think too much in his case. I think he's definitely not someone you looked at and thought he was the perfect, closing option for a team that really needs one. He's got some weaknesses, and like I said, the stuff isn't incredible. He gives up hard hit balls. He's just a guy who's figured out how to pitch in big spots, and that matters too. But I don't think you look at it and say, oh my gosh, maybe he's worse than we thought. I think, what happened last night is something that will happen to Kyle Finnegan now and again. It doesn't change your perspective. So I doubt that hurts him. I don't know if it makes the Nats think they're selling lower than they'd want to sell, but I think everyone's got a much bigger view of that than, we do when we're watching day to day. So I would assume that hasn't changed much for anyone.
I feel like that's one of those situations where if I was another GM, I'd be like, come on, Mike, no, we're not adding in that extra prospect, that extra pick, that extra whatever. And then Rizzo would be like, buzz off. Nothing changed. He's the same guy he was on Monday, before he got into the game. So I guess we'll find out if he gets traded here in the next 90 minutes. With all due respect to the Nationals, the most interesting team along the Beltway here is the Orioles as they continue to make some moves. And they are right at the top of the American League, certainly a World Series contender. What have you made of what the Orioles have done so far? As they've actually made a couple of moves over the last couple of days, including one just a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, they've gotten 2 starting pitchers, Zach Eflin and Trevor Rogers, and neither of those names is going to, pop your eyes out of your head or anything. I think, there was a lot of people looking at this team thinking they were going to make the deal for the big name and go out there and maybe try to get Tarek Skubal or somebody of that ilk. But the price of pitching is so high right now. I don't know this for sure. Mike Elias hasn't talked yet, but I think they probably looked at it and said, I'm not giving up Jackson Holliday for, a starter. It's just not going to happen. I don't think they were willing to make that move, at least not for the starters that were available, and dig into the top tier of their prospects. So they haven't. I mean, maybe something will change. I doubt it, but what they've gotten themselves is key starters. Eflin's a proven guy, a veteran, and Rogers is a lefty who they could probably make a lot better. Both of whom will be in the rotation again next year, which is big for them. They need innings, they need depth. So, I think they've sturdied their rotation. I don't know if they've, dramatically improved what happens in a short series in October. You're still really relying on Corbin Burns and Grayson Rodriguez and hoping, the third guy holds up. But, I think they're getting themselves there better. They're gonna get some guys who can eat some innings, and both of them will be here next year when they make a run at this again. And I think that's a huge asset for them.
The Orioles now are kind of going on year two, or they're, I guess, in year two of being ahead of schedule, right? Like they were building for so long. Then last year they pop in a way that people weren't quite expecting. This year they're on top of the AL East. And again, people are like, this is still a young team that is supposed to be ascending. As you talk to people around the league and have been covering this sport for long enough now, like, how do GMs handle that spot where you do not want to, mortgage any part of a future that you've been building for years while also wanting to strike while the iron is hot? And clearly, as one of the best teams in baseball, the iron is hot right now.
Yeah, I think they're in a unique position because so few general managers have looked up and found themselves with the kind of prospect depth that Mike Elias has here. It's really something. They traded Connor Norby, who's their seventh-ranked prospect today, for Rogers. And, I think with any other team, most other teams, that's a top three guy in the system. But here, he's an afterthought. So, they've just got so many guys. They've had to clear space on the big league roster for them. And I think, it's probably very difficult to decide who you part with and who you can't, who you can afford to let go and who you can't. And from my perspective, they've been a little bit stuck in that over the last 2 years. I think they have not been as aggressive as some people would have liked. It may prove to be the exact right way to handle this. It might not. But I think they're at the point now where, you have to turn promise into titles. The window's open. The window you waited to open, it's open. So, I think they'll make a run this year. They'll be in it again next year. But then you start to get towards, Adley and Gunnar and other guys, getting paid, and that makes it harder. So, they're calculating right now that they can win with a little bit less aggressiveness at this deadline, and they might be right. They've been right about a lot. But, the time is now, and I think there is, healthy debate to be had about whether they're acting like that.
A lot of big names have moved. A lot of contenders have made moves already, and we'll see, obviously, with the next 80 minutes here, what kind of flurry is still to come. But to this point, Chelsea, what team do you think has helped themselves the most in terms of winning the World Series in 2024?
No, it sounds crazy because I don't think they're considered a big contender, but I think the Padres have actually kind of made a big splash here. It looks like, just from, the reports of people who were usually right, they're going to get Tanner Scott from the Marlins. They added Jason Adams from the Rays. That makes their bullpen really good. Their lineup's been better. They've been playing with a lot less pressure than they had in years past. I think they're building to be one of those teams that catches fire at the right time, and I think they've made the moves to help them do it. But, big picture, I think it's so hard to tell. I mean, maybe the Orioles have made all the right moves. It's just hard to say right now. But I think the Padres have been the most aggressive. And for a team that's kind of like on the outskirts, maybe ready to be one of those wild card teams, they've put themselves in a good position to be the kind of team that can lock teams down in October, which is usually what wins.
All right, last but not least, as Chelsea Janes is our guest here on the Hoffman Show, of course, Major League Baseball reporter for the Washington Post. One of the guys who got traded today, Paul DeJong, he literally just had to switch dugouts because the trade happens between the White Sox and the Royals. They're playing each other, and I guess you go around the back. I don't know. Maybe if I was him, I'd march across the field. Be like, I'm not going around underneath. I'm going direct. What's your favorite wacky Major League Baseball trade deadline story? Because this kind of thing does happen with some regularity.
Man, that's such a good question. I mean, honestly, the thing that's hitting my mind right now is that I heard that by the time I got here today, so by the time the Orioles clubhouse opened at 3 p.m., Trevor Rogers was in town. I don't know if that is true. That is what I heard. And if that's true, he got there quickly. I think the Marlins were maybe in Tampa. So was he at the airport waiting for a flight? I don't know. I'll have more on that later. But today I've been like, that guy, did he fly here? It's wild. But yeah, there's always such weird stuff. I saw the Zach Eflin and others getting gift baskets today for their families, welcome to the Orioles stuff. So a lot goes on that people don't think about, but it is a wild, wild time.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's something every year that in every sport there is some sense of like, oh right, they're trading human beings. That's weird. Yeah. And I think my favorite, I can't remember who the guys were in the moment, but there's an NBA trade where the two guys got traded for each other and they knew each other, and so they just switched houses. And it was like, you just take my keys, I'll take yours, and that way we don't have to worry about housing because you're a human being who needs a house in a new city instantly and have no time to search for one. So that's probably my favorite one, but I'm sure we'll see some good ones, and we'll look forward to what you can gather on the Orioles front today. Chelsea Janes, WashingtonPost.com/sports for her work. Chelsea, always appreciate it. And we made it. There was nothing crazy that happened that took you away from our radio interview. Hallelujah.
Totally. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. That's Chelsea Janes, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Take a quick look at what's trending, and then Sam Fortier is going to join us coming up at 5 o'clock to react to Commanders Camp. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we are streaming live on YouTube again. Coming up Thursday is my first day out on vacation. Our YouTube stream will go on a hiatus. It'll be back when I'm back. So I think it's Monday the 12th is the day, which is also the first show that we have after the Commanders preseason opener. So I'll be back. The YouTube stream will be back. Everything will be back. So excited for that coming up on the 12th. But just letting the YouTube audience know that you can listen to the show on the Odyssey app or on team980.com and all the same places that your internet connected device works for YouTube. It's the beauty of them all being on the internet, Anthony.
Should I cry now or should I cry later?
Probably later. Although now would make for better content. Cry while the stream is going.
Yeah. Dang. I don't feel it right now.
You know?
Not yet.
Okay.
It was too spur of the moment.
Oh, your acting skills can use a little work. You just gotta be able to thumb it in. That was pathetic. Pro Football Talk. I don't know if you knew this, but Florio, Anthony, he's a lawyer. And so reviewing things like the 2,500-page Sunday ticket trial transcript are things that he does. But Pro Football Talk actually found something pretty interesting in the testimony from Kathy Yancey, the NFL's VP of Broadcasting Rights, Policies, and Compliance, who testified that starting this season, coaches will be required to give interviews during games. And so from the transcript, as pulled from Pro Football Talk, this year, we have a new policy going into effect where all of the clubs are going to have to make a head coach available live for an interview during the game. Each team has to provide a head coach, one in the first half, one in the second half, and that's for all teams, and it's available for all TV partners. Now, I think it was Amazon was doing this last year, and it actually was okay. Because so this is NBA style, where it's like first quarter, third quarter, right? And I wonder if with that language, one in the first half, one in the second half, does going off the field at halftime count and just coming back onto the field at halftime count? Because what had traditionally been the way is you had the option as a coach and as a team to talk on the way in or on the way out. And a lot of times reporters would have those conversations not like on TV, but there would be a quick chat, and then you'd hear I talked to Dan Quinn on the way out of the locker room, and he said that he wants his team to play better because they're losing. And you get, incredible insight and analysis like that. What it sounds like is you're going to get a first quarter and a third quarter interview now. And if that's the case, like in between quarters, I'm okay with it. But I generally find in-game interviews annoying. I am very rarely anti-access. I'm very rarely anti any of this stuff. But this is the one exception because I just think it's a time in the game where coaches need to coach. And especially for a football coach who doesn't get a chance to mid-drive, like talk to his guys very often. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I'm waffling because I'm doing this in real time. But like in basketball, there's a constant action, right? In football, if you wanted to make the argument that like, if I'll even pick Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan's the OC. Kyle Shanahan can't do an interview in game. He's got to call plays. You can't. They couldn't do it WNBA style where they put a headset on the coach and talk to the broadcast for the first minute of a quarter. It's ridiculous. I hate that they do that. It's absurd. Has it created some viral moments? Yes. Are they viral because they're ridiculous? Also, yes. But you can't do that because Kyle Shanahan can't be like, hold on, I have to hit the other button, X right, blah, 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 play call. Like, that's not how that works. In the preseason, it's fun. McVay's been doing that with the Rams broadcast for years, and it's a good time because he also is, though, letting one of his assistants call plays. And so he just is goofing off on the headset with the broadcast, having a grand old time. But for a regular NFL regular season game, like half these coaches are calling plays on one side of the ball or the other. D'Amico can't do it. He's calling defense. O'Connell can't do it. Sean can't do it. Both Floor can't do it. And so it just seems unfair to pull the coaches away from coaching. That said, in between the quarters, like if Kyle wants to go meet with Brock Purdy in between, like while the defense is on the field, he can do that. And so pulling him away in the middle of a quarter or on the quarter break and then airing it as the quarter starts and just doing it, 2 questions to tape real quick. That's not that bad of it. I actually don't mind that as much as frankly I do in the NBA when that is extremely valuable time. Or what they do in the W where they like literally put a headset on the coach while the game is going, because that's patently absurd.
Yeah,
You still don't like it. Your whole body language is this sucks.
Yeah, I feel as though the coaches definitely need that time to, gather themselves. Like during the course of a football game, like it's constantly moving. It's constantly moving. Not to say, in basketball it's not, but I feel like basketball is more scheme and like, process like oriented. Like you really gotta, take some time to like, I just think you need time.
Here's the other thing. I would say most of the time the questions suck. And I don't know what are good questions to ask in the middle of a game. Could I think of some that are decent? I mean, could I think of some that are never going to get answered that are good questions? Yes. Hey, what adjustments are you going to make? I'm not going to tell you because there's 100% chance that someone in their press box is watching this interview. Like, yeah, we're gonna shift the nickel inside a little bit and take away this run gap. You're not getting that kind of answer. You're not getting anything truthful. So it really have to be like, how do you feel about this? It's like emotional based questions. And it's like, I'm excited. I think we're doing a good job. Or I'm pissed. And which you probably could have guessed based off the scoreboard. Honestly, what I would do is when we had, like if I was a sideline reporter, if we had our meeting on Friday or Saturday with the coaches, I'd be like, what will you answer? Or like, I'm going to ask you about this. And that way they know and it's not a surprise and they're not trying to think on the fly and like, which is antithetical to everything that I would ever say in any other interview setting. But if I'm trying to get some kind of nugget for my audience, I want to ask something that the coach is going to be willing to answer. And if I've already told them like, hey, if you're up, I'm going to ask what's going well. If you're down, I'm going to ask what you need to fix. And if you're tied, I'm going to ask you one thing you like and one thing you don't. That way, when they come to me, it's less stressful and I might get a better answer. That would be my strategy.
You don't think coaches, regardless, like if they are down, you don't think, I just feel like people are moody. So like if your team's out there getting their tail kicked, they're going to give, sarcastic. They're going to give.
But that's my thing is like, can I disarm them? If I'm like, hey, just so you know, if you're down 14-0 at the end of the first quarter, I'm going to ask you what didn't go well and how comfortable or how confident you are that you can fix it. And I'm not trying to like, I hate that. I would basically try to sell them on the fact that I hate that I have to do this interview. I think it's stupid. Yeah. And so just play ball with me and let's make it painless. Like, let's just try not to go viral, or let's go viral because it's funny, not something that you're going to have to apologize for later.
Yeah, you're more so just doing your job. You're there so you don't get fired.
Yeah. Just have Marshawn do the interviews. Then they're both there so they don't get fined.
Yeah. That too.
Now we have a plan. Sam Fortier, excellent reporter for the Washington Post covering the Commanders. We sat down after practice today and debriefed on what we saw. You'll hear it for Not My Beat next. It's the Hoffman Show, hour number 2 here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Don't forget, if you're watching or checking us out in a place where you're like, man, I really wish I could listen to the show, and all I have is my laptop, you can go to the team980.com as well. Team980.com/listen will take you directly to where you can listen to the show on your computer. And again, any mobile device, the Odyssey app, it's also Alexa enabled, so you can be like, hey, Alexa, play the Team 980. And next thing you know, if it's between the hours of 4 and 7, I'll be talking to you. So that's fun. Every single day, 5 o'clock, we tackle the top story. And today, we were actually able to tackle said top story on site. Had the chance to catch up with my guy, Sam Fortier, after practice out in Ashburn. And that is today's Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Sam Fortier of the Washington Post. Today felt like more familiar, I think, of a lot of past training camp practices where you have some nice stretches of consecutive plays with the same personnel, more move the ball, less situational. Felt like I got a little bit more of a feel for kind of some of what they're going to be doing down in, down out. But what have you generally made of camp so far? So much situational work, the shift a little bit today, the amount of time they wore in pads, anything that's really stood out to you in Dan Quinn's first camp?
Yeah, Dan Quinn's first camp, and thank you for bringing this microphone, Craig. I really appreciate it.
This bit will play extraordinarily well on the radio. We were going to use fancier microphones, and I forgot a memory card, and now Sam's exposed that to the entire world. Anyway, the answer to my question, into the microphone that's working,
is the thing that stood out to me, obviously, is competition, and I think that manifests probably most relevant in the radio space to the quarterback quote-unquote competition, which I say with heavy irony. And so, but I think it is real in every other aspect of the team. I think that no one is guaranteed a roster spot. There's obviously some roster locks, but when you see Jamin Davis working at edge rusher, when you see a rookie like Jordan McGee taking first-team reps, I think that when you see Ricky Stromberg rotating in to take first-team center reps, even though, I think he's a guy that's very much on the bubble, if not on the wrong side of it. I just think that there's a lot of things that they're practicing what they preach, basically. And so I think that you're seeing a lot of that. And then there's, on-field schematic things that we can get into. But I think my main takeaway is it's a new era. The focus is on football, and they're competing.
For sure. I think the schematic thing that jumped out to me most today is that vertical passing game. That's obviously a hallmark for Cliff Kingsbury. We see some shots. We see a number of them completed. Terry gets a big one. Bryson Tremaine gets a big one. I think I wrote down in my notepad on that last move the ball drill for the second team offense, the one that Mariota was leading. I was like, drive summary. Penalties, BS, Bryson Tremaine for 60. So what have you seen schematically from Cliff so far, whether it's the red zone stuff or like we see kind of more middle of the field, full field type stuff today?
I'm curious because in the spring he was experimenting with a lot of different stuff, right? Like Luke McCaffrey in the backfield, 2 running back sets. He was doing a lot of different things. And as Zach Ertz said yesterday, he sees Cliff Kingsbury being rejuvenated, refocused, and really excited, I guess, to work with these quarterbacks after a year off of being a head coach, working at USC as an analyst and then coming here. And so I think you're just seeing him get more creative. And the run game to me has been different because I think one of the big criticisms of him in the past is that he hasn't married the run game to the pass game. And I think you're seeing it a little bit. Not that they're getting into super tactical stuff right now, but I think that just from the way players have been talking, I think it'll be more married, and I'm sure Anthony Lynn has a big part of that. But to your point, the vertical passing game really stood out today. And my question is, Bryson Tremaine is the only receiver in camp who's taller than 6'1", who's that big body kind of possession guy. He's the first player on the field almost every day. That didn't help him last year. Will it help him this year? Especially with a thinner receiver room, I could see him pushing for a spot, particularly because of the way that Cliff likes to play, but also he works hard, but it hasn't been enough in the past. Will it be enough this year?
Sam Fortier, Washington Post, with us here on the Hoffman Show. That microphone that you're holding is just utterly ridiculous. So do you feel like anybody has made any major movements in terms of roster spots, like any guys that's really stood out, any guy that's maybe dropped off in a way that you didn't expect, or is it still too early to realistically be talking about any of that stuff?
Let's stick with the receivers because De'Ami Brown, to me, coming into this, I was like, they could very easily cut De'Ami Brown because he's a guy that, even though he shines in camps, has not had a lot of production. I don't think he's top 200 receiving yards in a season yet, and he just kind of disappears for stretches. And he has been, in 3 receiver sets, it's him, Jahan, and Terry, like out there almost every time. Even though they're rotating guys in, they're getting Diami a ton of, number 1 reps. And that could be a thing where they're just testing him now and maybe he falls off, or maybe they mix it up. But in the vertical passing game, like we're talking about, Diami has legit speed. He runs legit go routes. I could see him running slot fades. I think that, like, his skill set is tailored to Cliff's offense. And for a guy who I think has pretty clearly failed to live up to his potential so far, this is a really interesting start for him. And I think that, like, if you had asked me before day 1 of camp, I would have said Diami is probably a 50-50 to make the roster. And now I'm much closer to like 75-25.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the irony of Diami is if there was a guy coming into the camp that I said Bryson Tremaine is battling him for a roster spot, I would have said Diami, because what Diami's gotten speed, Bryson's gotten height. They're both tremendous special teams players. Obviously, we haven't seen that at the NFL level from Tremaine yet because he didn't make the roster, but he was a guy that was a dog on teams at Stanford. So I think that I agree with you. The way he's been utilized is super interesting. I think defensively is where we start to see some of the utilization packages become really interesting as well. You see in the 2-minute today, Fowler and Luvu as the starting edges, and you're like, oh, they're serious about this Luvu on the edge thing. But then you see McGee line up some there. Obviously, there's the Jamin Davis discussion. What stuck out for you for kind of that group, the front 7, anything in particular from this first, 5 practices in?
So this is like not that relevant to your question, but I talked to Jordan McGee coming off the field after practice because he got some reps with the ones. And I want to point out that I reported a story, shameless plug, inside their draft process. And Jordan,
which you can listen to or read at WashingtonPost.com/sports.
Wow, Craig, I feel like we're alley-ooping right now. And Lance Newmark, the assistant GM, told me that if there was an organizational pick, it was Jordan McGee. They had a commander's caucus where everyone voted before day 3 of the draft, like, who is a guy that we should draft or we should compete to sign as a UDFA? It was just like, who's your favorite guy left? And in the organization, like, the unanimous consensus pick, not unanimous, the consensus pick was Jordan McGee. And today he got some first-team reps in a 3 linebacker set, and Zach Ertz ran basically an in-breaking route, an outside release, and in Jordan McGee's words, he kind of chicken-winged him, cutting inside, and he picked up a 6-7 yard gain. And I asked Jordan, I was like, to me, I saw that, and I was like, oh, that's a vet just, like, getting one over on a rook. And Jordan was like, yeah, that's basically what it was. And he got that chicken wing on me in the outside release. And so next time, like, what I got to do is I just got to, like, get my hands on him at the line, just quicker to disrupt his timing. And he was like, but that's something that, like, I can take right away and I can translate with my athleticism. And, like, that's the thing I can get better at tomorrow.
What do you made of Ertz so far?
I think that Ertz has been solid, I think that he is going to be a guy in the red zone in the passing game who's he's going to be a contributor. I don't know if I'm the best co-host that you have to analyze NFL tight end film, but I think that, like, he's going to be a solid addition. But I do wonder, how well-rounded can his game be at this point in his career?
No, I think that's fair. And speaking of the big fella, like, one thing that Logan has talked about a lot is, like, Ertz just understands the dark arts of route running. And I think we saw that today in the red zone, 4th down, like, got to have it. Where does Daniels look? He looks for Ertz and he gets open. You see some of the key 1st down or 3rd downs, like, need to get a first. Ertz just has an ability to find a way. And one thing that I think is kind of the big holdback on some of the offensive production that we've seen is we saw some last year too, and then it turns out it's because the defense was terrible. How are you trying to judge, like, where each side of the ball is this year, knowing that we haven't seen them line up against anybody else, and that is actually what matters?
If you remember, about 12 months ago, we were talking about how sick Emmanuel Forbes was and how, like, the weight wasn't going to be a concern because he was, like, bodying dudes in camp. And so, look, I mean, you and I spend a lot of time thinking about, writing about, talking about, studying this stuff. We talk to people who are in the know. And I think the hard part for, like, fans probably to appreciate, especially because, like, you want to come out and say, this guy is X or this guy is Y.
Right.
And, like, I think with Emmanuel last year, like, I don't think Emmanuel was as bad as he looked last year. But, like, when you get put in press coverage against A.J. Brown at his size, like, that, you are being set up to fail. And so to me, I am gathering data, I guess, like, data in terms of, like, data points when I'm watching, like the Jordan McGee thing we just talked about. But I'm trying not to overweight it. I'm trying not to get too confident in my conclusions right now because, like, they're still trying to figure it out. And even when I talk to coaches or, other people in the building, it's like, hey, like, this is what we're seeing. We're going to continue to do this. But, like, some people are dogs. Like, Taylor Heineke was not a good practice player, but on Sundays he got up with a different dude, And so I think I'm trying to gather intel right now, but not be like, oh, this is what it is.
So Sam Fortier, Washington Post with us. Read his work. I'll plug it for you. WashingtonPost.com/sports. My other favorite thing about this time of year is just everybody's in a good mood. You get to report great stories. People are willing to talk about whatever it is. What's your favorite conversation you've had at training camp so far?
I mean, you're really laying this up for me, but I wrote a story on Saturday about Cornelius Lucas. And Cornelius, when he was a kid, when he was 7 years old, his dad drowned. And it was a very traumatic experience for him, obviously. But over the last 2 years, I should also give some background real quick. He was an undrafted free agent out of Kansas State. He didn't play football until he was in 10th grade. And he really only told me he only got into college because he was big. And they were like, okay, he's a 6'8", 300-pound kid. We should, give him a chance. He goes undrafted, and he has lasted. This is his 11th year in the league, which I looked that up. That's 0.6% of players. If you're a UDFA, getting to 10 years is really, really difficult. And so he finally, last year, in his words, felt like he had filled himself up enough to pour into others. And so he decided that he was going to host a camp. A lot of players have camps, but he was like, you know what? I should do a swim camp for fatherless boys in his hometown, New Orleans, because not only did I have past trauma with it, New Orleans is below sea level, it floods all the time. This is a survival skill for guys. And Cornelius has never been in a pool where he's not tall enough where he can stand up in it. And so he said, confronting that fear and helping these kids confront that fear. And he said there was a big kid at this camp, and Cornelius was the only guy strong enough to hold him up. And so he helped the guy float, and he was like, let's fight this fear together. Trust me, I won't let you drown. And I think it's really important because right now Cornelius is actually preparing to become a father for the first time. He's having a son due in early November. And to me, to hear a person not just go through childhood trauma, but then translate it and really say, hey, I'm going to make kids like me in my hometown not fear the same thing I feared. And also to be doing that, to prepare your son. He said, I want my son to swim, and he wants his son to struggle and to fight to float at first. He wants to throw him in the water because he doesn't want him to feel the same fear that he experienced. And so to me, that's not really about ball, but that's about, the human condition and fighting to be, better off than when you were a kid, and to honor his father's memory in that way, I thought was really powerful. That's really great stuff, dude. If you want to read that story, once again, WashingtonPost.com/sports. Sam Fortier with us today for Not My Beat out here at Commanders Camp. More Hoffman Show next here on the Team 980.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And I don't know, and we were talking during the break, and I feel like the conversation just needs to come to the air about what we were just talking about when it comes to the quarterback situation here in DC. Jaden Daniels continuing to split reps with Marcus Mariota, and I don't know. You put your premise out there, and then I'll say what I have to say, because I don't want to get started down a road that is not as interesting as the thing that you were talking about. Because I think also what I want to say is obviously related. So you go.
I think when it comes to Jaden Daniels, well, initially when it came to Jaden Daniels, I felt as though the fan base was sort of kind of like split on whether or not he should start week 1. Whether, they should sit him, the first 2-3 games, let him understand the game a little bit, and then, throw him out there, just not throw him right into the fire. And I feel like I'm at a point now where I think I've seen enough, and I'm okay with, him going out there as the Commanders, week 1 started. Granted, he hasn't played any preseason games, but again, based on like what I've seen, the fact that, he's decisive, he's quick getting the ball out. We know he can extend his legs. He has no problem being aggressive, taking a deep shot, his pinpoint accuracy. I think I've seen enough to the point where I'm okay with, the guy we took at number 2 overall going out there and playing week 1. If that's the plan, the coaching staff puts in place.
I don't disagree. Here's my only thing. I just really wish some people would have listened to me in the spring. Like, I don't want to make this about me, obviously, but like, what did I say in the spring? It's nothing to do with Marcus Mariota. It has everything to do with Jaden Daniels. When Jaden Daniels is ready, like the evidence will be there. Jaden will play. And if he's ready on time for the season to start, great. If he's not, then Marcus Mariota is a sacrificial lamb who, unless he were to come out and just play unbelievable football as the starting quarterback and they're on a roll, then it matters how he's playing, because they're not going to sacrifice the season. But it's about Jaden and his readiness, and we won't know that until later. And looky now, it's later, and he's really good, and he's ready, and he's better than Mariota already by a lot. And again, it's not so much that that's ready, because like I think the cleaner example on the rookie readiness versus veteran ability is in New England, right? If we know Jacoby Brissett's a better player than Drake May. Drake May is the one in this class that needed to sit of the top guys the most, and Jacoby is the most certain of, like, it's Sam Darnold in Minnesota, it's Marcus here. They didn't bother with one in Chicago, so Caleb is a little bit different. But of the veteran backups, Jacoby's the guy that gives you the best chance amongst all those guys. But if Drake May comes out and in camp is balling and showing a complex understanding of things, or if in week 4, like, it basically doesn't matter how Jacoby's playing. Like, they should play Drake May. And so here, it's like the fact that Marcus isn't very good or hasn't been very good makes it easier to be like, yes, we should play Jaden. But if they don't think Jaden's ready, they should still play Marcus, because the most important thing, this is something that I think some of the smart people in the space have talked about quite a bit. And I actually heard a conversation between my guys, Robert Mays and Trevor Sikkema, on Robert's show, the Athletic Football Show. And shout out to Mays if you're driving around listening. Congratulations on staying awake. But Robert was at camp today. He was actually on a red eye. He was in Seattle yesterday. Flew in the red eye to Dulles, went straight to camp. My guy was struggling this morning. I don't know if you saw the big old coffee that Robert had when you met him, but yeah. Anyway, but Robert and Trevor were talking about this on their show, or on Robert's show, and I think they both put it really well in their own ways of basically like, you need to just make sure you're getting good reps and developing good habits. And so once the quarterback can get out there and have the experience be worth it, he should play. But if you're going to have someone go out there and just like throw up all over themselves and develop bad habits and be rushed all the time. They're playing with a bad set of skill position guys behind a bad O-line. You're actually doing harm to the quarterback. And so I think that's the thing that you have to talk about here is like, is the supporting cast good enough? Which we're going to find out. But I think, yes, he's got good receivers. He's got a good veteran tight end who's reliable. The O-line is obviously a huge question mark. And I think a lot of people in like the national media that have talked about this, their concern is the O-line because they think it's worse than, say, I do. Not that I think it's great, but I think it's competent enough and the play calling will help insulate it. So if then the last piece and the biggest piece of that is Jaden's processing is good enough that he can go out and even when he makes mistakes, because he's a rookie, but that they're productive mistakes. It's like, oh, I know what happened there. I can learn from that. Won't do that again. Or like, oh, and now I've seen that coverage. I know what to look for on this. Got it. Oh, I can't put that throw there, or I need to throw it harder, or I need to throw it with more height. I need to have better touch. I can't get away with this thing that I did in college. I need to be a little bit more focused. Like, as long as those are the experiences, not set hut, why am I dying? Like that is the determining factor. And that's been the case all along. What I think it's changed is more people have seen him. More people have seen him in an NFL setting. And that has now changed the equation to be more real for people, where I guess the equation is the same all along, but like now instead of being like 3x plus 2y equals start him, like we know what x and y are, at least better. And I think that is what's influencing and changing people's opinion on this.
Yeah, but also the other side of it, I guess, when it comes to actually measuring, I guess, Jaden Daniels, are we measuring him against Mariota, or is it more so just we're observing to see where he is in his development, his progression, before we thrust him out there?
No, Keim has a funny way of putting it. He said it's Jaden versus Daniels. That's what it is. That's honest to God, all it is Jaden versus Daniels, because if he's ready, he should get the experience. Yeah. Him being the best version of himself as soon as possible is the most valuable thing in the franchise. Because if you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, or a quarterback on a rookie quarterback contract, that is how you build a championship roster around it. It's the way San Francisco is built up around Brock Purdy. It's the way that Houston is currently like, oh, yeah, we're going to go get Stephon Diggs. We're going to go get Joe Mixon. We're going to go get these veteran skill guys at positions that cost a premium because we're not paying a quarterback. And so if you get Jaden there a season sooner by playing him and getting him good experience versus letting him sit, that's good. So it really is about when does he hit the level that you feel like that is the case. And if I'm being honest with my evaluation with where he is, he hit that the first time he stepped on the field. Like that dude is as together mentally as any rookie you're going to find. He has a work ethic. He has a work pattern, right? He figured out what worked for him in terms of a routine at the NFL level, and he'll refine it over the years. And he doesn't know if it's working yet in terms of he hasn't played a game yet, but he's certainly learning at the rate that they want him to. He's performing in practice as well as you could reasonably ask for. And so, yeah, it's Jaden versus Daniels, and whichever side is the starter or him being the starter, that side's winning. I don't know whether that's Jaden versus everybody's winning. They're all winning. We're all winning, Anthony.
Nah, I mean,
we are the Commanders.
I love it. Can't get enough of it.
Ha. No? Nothing?
I wish I had your board up over here so I could play it.
Sound bites? Yeah, no. I don't have the sound bites today. Anthony doesn't have the sound bites today. Ha! And it's kind of funny because Craig Melvin's doing the Olympic coverage. And every time I see Craig Melvin, who's a pro's pro, is great. I've met him once, like, couldn't be nicer. Has a tremendous first name, but I will never get over the ha-ha. Apropos of, well, actually some of that. We're going to talk a little bit about the Olympics next. I don't know. Well, I don't know which direction. There's a lot of Olympic stuff to talk about. Just know we're going to talk about the Olympics yet. I will say, including potentially the ticket that I have now purchased, that might be the best Olympic ticket of the entire cycle. Is there another day that you would rather go to than the ticket that my wife and I are going to get to go to next Thursday in Paris. We will discuss that amongst other things next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We are on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we're going to the Olympics. Well, the show is not. I'm going to the Olympics. I'm pretty pumped. And we're going to talk more about the U.S. Men's basketball team, the U.S. Women's soccer team, and their games tomorrow to end the show at 6:30. But, Anthony, as we're talking about the Olympic stuff, and by the way, more training camp on the Commanders front, 5:45. What's the difference in practicing in pads or not? Logan and I talked about it on Take Command, and obviously, he's done it. He's practiced in the pads. So you will get his perspective on that, as the Commanders were actually not in pads today. But you will hear Logan on the difference between, say, yesterday and today's practice and kind of why it's so important to get some reps in pads beyond the obvious that football is played in pads, but a more nuanced look coming up at 5:45. So 10 minutes from now. But Olympics-wise, Anthony, we're going to talk about Simone Biles and what Team USA did today in gymnastics tomorrow, because we realize that a lot of you listening might be driving home having not watched it, myself included. I was busy preparing for the show and everything today. So it has happened. If you know what happened, great. If not, I'm not going to ruin it for you. No spoilers on that front, because it'll be a part of NBC's primetime coverage tonight. So we'll talk about that and Biles and everything tomorrow. But for now, one story that actually is amazing and then touches closer to home. Did you see what happened in the USA rugby game today?
The women's rugby game?
Yes.
You talking about the walk-off?
Yeah.
The run?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Do you understand rugby at all yet? Have you watched enough, or do you know, have you followed rugby before?
Yeah, I understand rugby.
Because, the clock thing was interesting to me. So what happened today is what was described on Twitter by someone who's clearly an expert is that the U.S. basically won the bronze medal game against Australia on the equivalent of a 95-yard walk-off touchdown. Clock is ticking down. U.S. is pinned back on their own in the shadow of their own end zone, whatever they call it in rugby. I'm not even going to pretend like I'm an expert. I'm not. And this girl just breaks a tackle and runs the entire length of the field to put the U.S. on top. And they always dive into the end zone because I think you have to have the ball down in the end zone as part of the way to finish a play. But then as the clock hit 0, she still had 10, 12 yards to go. And there's another clock that magically appeared and then started counting up. So I was like, I don't understand this. I was also just watching a highlight, but it was incredible. The U.S. wins. 95-yard, basically, walk-off. It's not a touchdown, whatever it's called in rugby. Just an incredible sporting moment for a program that is chronically underfunded, and as many of these programs that are, Olympic sports are, they're just not as popular in America. But it was interesting, I think, Anthony, to watch the reaction after, because there were more than a few folks that I saw. I mean, everyone's like, yeah, USA, USA, of course, because that's the best part about the Olympics. It's, you get to just get, rambunctious and rowdy and somewhat obnoxious for our country, even if it's in a sport that we would not watch the other 360 days a year. And so, yeah, rugby sevens, USA, USA, we won the bronze medal. We beat mighty Australia. Sick. But there were some folks that were like, this is the 99er moment. 99er in reference to U.S. women's soccer in 1999, winning the World Cup on U.S. soil, which launched a generation of greatness where really we're now in almost the generation that followed that. The Kristen Presses, the Tobin Heaths, the Heather O'Reillys. There are some, leftovers from the previous generation that was really inspired by the 99ers, Crystal Dunn, Alex Morgan, et cetera, who grew up and were more 9, 10 years old watching the 99ers, where you got some folks on the U.S. women's national team now who weren't even born in 1999, which is nuts, including, by the way, Trinity Rodman, the Washington Spirit Zone. But Trin grew up watching Alex, and then, you get that kind of second generation inspiration and the next thing. But there was a couple of folks that I follow that were like, this could be the 99er moment for rugby. Well, one thing that, if you know the history of the women's soccer struggle is, you come back in 1999, win the World Cup, everyone's on top of the world. The women's professional soccer league that was in operation at the time then folded a couple years later. And there were 2 or 3 other leagues that ultimately tried and folded until the NWSL, the current league, started up in 2013. But even in 2011, after they come back from a silver medal in the Olympics, a team that got a ton of attention, there was huge problems, and a league folded literally months later. And so funding tends to be an issue. And this is where the local tie comes in for, I doubt you've seen this story yet, Anthony, because it literally just popped like 10, 15 minutes ago. But Michelle Kang, the owner of the Spirit, has, in lieu of today's game, I'm sure she was working on this anyway, but it's a better story with this, has given $4 million to USA Rugby through this new company that she has started. The company is called Kiniska, and it was announced earlier this week. I got the press release and was like, whoa, this is sick. But Michelle, who owns not only the Spirit, but Olympique Lyon in France, the London Lionesses, has started this company, Kiniska Sports International, which is the first global female-owned multi-club organization in women's football, basically designed to research and implement the best practices for women's soccer for everybody, but certainly for her teams first, in a attempt to get both a competitive advantage and better environments for these women playing soccer in France, the US, London, and whatever else Michelle decides to buy next. And so through that company, she has now given $4 million over the course of 4 years to USA Women's Rugby Sevens to see if they can help grow the sport, finance it, and be better and compete for gold at the 2028 games. So imagine you win bronze today and you realize your sport gets this kind of attention, this kind of gift money-wise. Like, this feels, I don't know a lot about the history of rugby, Anthony. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but this feels like the best day ever in the history of women's rugby in the United States.
I think it definitely is. Again, they go out there, they win bronze off the walk-off try.
Which in itself, no money, no nothing. Oh, the try. Yes, that would be the best day ever. You won bronze medal on the 95-yard try.
Yeah.
We tried and we succeeded.
But I feel as though when it comes to the Olympics in general, the fact that, a sport like rugby that hasn't gotten too much attention, now it's going to gain that notoriety. And that's sort of kind of what I just always enjoy about the Olympics, because there's always somebody, a new athlete with a very, inspiring story. And now, they go out here, they make history, and now we're forever known who the rugby team is, and we're going to follow them from now on.
Right. And I'm sure that they'll be able to go on a tour of some kind, play some games, and do that here in the U.S. A couple of the players all of a sudden become household names. They get they get personal money for the endorsement deals and that kind of stuff. So very, very, very cool day at the Olympics. We'll talk more about what's coming up tomorrow on the Olympics at 6:30, specifically U.S. Women's National Soccer. Big news injury-wise for them today that could result in another Washington Spirit player winding up getting some game time tomorrow. So we'll talk about that at 6:30, as well as preview the USA men's basketball game against South Sudan, who gave them a hell of a run in the lead-up games to this tournament. Next, though, what's it like practicing in pads versus not? It sounds like a simple question, but it's more nuanced than you think. Logan Paulson shares his insight via Take Command next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We got our Pick 6 at 6, biggest storylines from Commanders training camp coming up at 6 p.m. Right now, though, little thought from Logan Paulsen on practice in pads. Yesterday was the first padded practice. That we wound up not having a padded practice today, but I thought this conversation that we had on Take Command was worth playing because Logan gets into some of the things that are different once you get into the pads as a player. So here it is, the start of the latest edition of the Take Command podcast.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Pads are on for Take Command. I'm going to run full speed into Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman. I would fall over if that happened, just to be very, very clear. First day of pads today, Logan. Exciting day always in the training camp. Kind of timeline. Fans back in attendance today as well as they were on Sunday. One more practice tomorrow before they take a break. Wednesday is an off day, so they changed that up. Initially, they were going to go 3 days in a row from what I was told, and then they've mixed that up. Thursday, the next practice. But we're in it, man. And next week, it's not too long till they're up in New York doing the joint thing, and then on to preseason game number 1. Here we are, padded practice time.
Here we are, man, and it's always fun when you get to padded practices, I think, because it's real football. You know, it's like all this speculation, and this guy looks good, and this guy's moving nice, and it's a little bit different when you put the pads on. Like I remember, when I was playing, I'd always try to kind of simulate the pads. I'd try to buy a weight vest and try to run the routes and try to, do all this different stuff. And there's nothing quite like it. You know what I'm saying? And, the weight vest does a good job of simulating kind of the weight of it, how you got to move with it on. But there's something about running into other people full speed that is just, you can't get any other way. And so I just, like today, going out there, watching some of the young guys come to the field, I was like, I remember how nerve-wracking this day was, because you're like, do I still got it? Am I ready for it? Am I going to get embarrassed? Am I going to embarrass somebody? So I love the full padded days, as I loved them as a player too. Again, the first one's always a little bit nerve-wracking, but I thought it was great to see them in full pads. I think just the other thing I just wanted to point out real quick, because we're talking high-level stuff, is I've just been so impressed with the scheduling of this camp so far. I can't even stand it. Like the way they've gone through every single phase, how they had to practice Sunday to lead into this one. And they could just, as a player, I just think, man, they're doing such a good job taking care of these guys, which is really nice to see. And, I know people are kind of moving this direction around the league, but I think Dan's done a really nice job. Dan and, Adam done a great job of kind of making sure these guys are taken care of. And again, kudos to the strength and conditioning staff, because I think they got a big say in that as well. But this is how you have a healthy team going into something like a joint practice, going into something like your first preseason game.
Yeah, the periodization of this has been so smart. And it's the kind of thing where you see it and you're like, why didn't everybody do it this way? Like they have 3 unpadded practices, one each a little bit longer than the previous. Then you take a day off, let everybody recover. Cool. Then you have a pretty full practice Sunday, not padded. And then today is padded, but it's really short. It was supposed to be, I think it was supposed to end at 10:25. So it's an 85-minute practice. Yeah. And they wound up running through it pretty quick. And they were basically done at like 10:15, 10:10. And then they had a 10-minute kind of individual with your position group, extra work period. That was everybody, helmets are off, like just kind of extra basics, cool down work, almost skill work for some, whatever. The D-line looked like they were in a prayer circle. I don't know what they were doing. But it really is intelligent in terms of the high level, because it's actually, you started talking about something that I want to now ask you about, have you explain to the audience, because I think it's the kind of perspective you can only get from someone who played the game. But the difference in running and then performing the skills, if you will, of running routes and catching the football and all that kind of stuff in pads, and also especially when you talk about catching the ball in a helmet versus not. Like, can you try to explain the difference to people of what that feels like?
Yeah, so I think the best way I had it articulated was like, I was doing with some strength coach something, and I was like, we got to be ready for, I was probably 26, and I was like, going to get ready for camp. I got to get in camp shape. And he kind of pulled me aside because he knew I was really into strength and conditioning. He was like, nothing we do here is ever going to simulate camp. And I kind of was like, why not? I'm running fast. I'm like, lifting heavy weights. And he goes, there's something about getting into the competitive activity. You just ramp up a little bit more. So again, like I talked about how I tried to simulate it with the pads, but like it doesn't, with the weight vest, but it doesn't actually one-to-one corollary because I'm not competing against somebody else the way I will be competing when it comes to training camp. And then you go from relatively low competition, like coaches do a good job of simulating, with games and, punishments and all that kind of stuff. But when you're out there and you go from basically zero competition, so you're operating, let's say at, 90%, to every single rep, you're operating at 95, 97, 98% of what you can do on a daily basis is a pretty stark increase in intensity. And I think the one thing about the preseason is that it does ramp up like that, right? You go non-padded. Again, it'll be faster because you're in competition. You put the pads on, it's even still faster, right? You go to your first joint practice, that's faster. First preseason, faster. You get a little bit of a regression. You kind of do the same thing again. And then it's faster for season. It's faster later in the season. It's faster for playoffs. Like it's faster in the division. So there are times where it ramps up. And I think they've just handled those ramp up moments, like you said, really intelligently. Because as a player, like I remember my first training camp, which was in 2010, I was not physically right till probably like 4 weeks into season. Like my body was so banged up, so heavy, so sore. And I'm like, in retrospect, I thought that was necessary to kind of breed this toughness. But like the practice today, man, they were popping pads. They were being super physical. The tempo they were able to execute practice with was super high. So love all that stuff. And it's a way to get to that stuff in a smarter, more conducive way that's not going to wear you out the same way those old camps, those old double days, those old grind you to dust type of environments used to be. And again, that's not a criticism of Mike Shanahan. Like his camp was relatively easy for the time frame they were in. But I'm saying like even now, like the science, the intelligence, the decision making, I think it's going to lead to healthier, happier players that can play longer and have better lives post football. And I just think it's a great thing.
Yeah. That's all great information. That wasn't even what I was asking, but that's great. I was even just talking about the basics of like, hey, your head becomes really heavy and when you're running a route with a helmet on, and the strain of that, the extra weight you carry of the pads themselves, like there's an adjustment period of just like realizing how your body moves in space with that extra weight on. Additionally, there's also everything that actually leads into everything you just talked about in terms of the ramp up of how you thus condition those things over time so that you are not trying to make these leaps and you're asking your body to do more than it can handle, which is exactly how you get hurt.
Yeah, and I think the thing you brought up about pads there, the one thing that I used to experience almost to a T was like I'd be doing routes on air, 7-on-7 OTA routes, mini camp routes with no pads on or like shells on. And you can shoulder through stuff, you could turn stuff, you could break down a little bit different. But when you run routes with the pads on, you add like an extra, 2 inches to your surface area. So all of a sudden these DB strikes that they're putting out there in terms of jamming and rerouting, you can't shoulder through them the same way, right? Because you have more, the DB's got more surface area, right? You can't whip your head around the same way at the start. Like there's all these little subtle things that lead to a difference in play and performance that need to be accommodated. And then don't even get me started on run blocking. Like it totally changes everything you can do. Like when you're blocking, like you have these handles on a guy, right? They can't slither through. They can't get skinny the same way. You can throw your head across and not worry about him, kind of dinging you or cutting your face up without a helmet on. Like you can get where you got to be. And so, again, like it becomes real, like the things I was just talking about in terms of saving and protecting players, but also like technically and tactically, there's a different element to it that you need to adjust to, which is, I think, also in addition to the physical fatigue, is also very mentally fatiguing, and again, takes a couple days to kind of adjust to, and for guys to start figuring out what they can and can't do now that they got the pads on.
All right, if you want the full breakdown of yesterday's practice and everything that we've seen through the first 5 days, then subscribe to Take Command and listen tonight and, take care of all of that. And then tomorrow you'll have a fresh episode in your feed because we recorded one today after today's practice, and it's not releasing until tomorrow morning. But if you're subscribed, it comes right to you anyway. So subscribe to Take Command and, of course, the Hoffman Show podcast so you don't miss any part of this show. We're more than just your commute here on the Team 980. When we get back, something that you definitely want to listen to on demand or live every single day of training camp, it is our Pick 6 at 6, the biggest storylines from day 6 of Commanders Camp. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Funny you played that Fortier Open, Anthony, because, well, Sam was on the show earlier today. Great chat with him after training camp today. If you missed it, it's 5 o'clock. Rewind in the Odyssey app, or hour number 2 of our show is up on the podcast feed. And as we embark here on hour number 3, it is time for our Pick 6 at 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, we got the notebook. We got the notes. We are ready. See, full. Oh, that was a bad paper sound effect. Whatever. This paper doesn't make good sound effects. Point is, I have my notebook, I got my notes ready to go. It was an explosive day at camp. We saw the offense really get going. We saw the defense make a bunch of plays, so let's dive right into it. First observation is...
Number 1.
Jaden Daniels. Kid's a baller. Continues to make plays. And you saw it today in structure and out of structure. And I think that was the thing that was really cool is, you become a killer in this league by making plays in structure, by simply dropping back, getting the ball where it's supposed to on time. And you look at what C.J. Stroud did last year and how he was able to have such a productive rookie season. It's because he was just an absolute killer in structure. And if you gave him opportunities to take stuff deep, he did. And he hit Tank Dell for the big ones. He hit Nico Collins for the big ones. And you saw that today. Terry McLaurin, Bryson Tremaine, and we'll talk about more in a few, amongst those getting the deep balls from Jaden Daniels. But you also saw him make plays out of structure, get out of the pocket, extend plays. And the one thing that I think is really impressive, or one of the things I should say that's really impressive about Daniels so far, is he has extended a lot of plays, but he hasn't run a lot. Like, we know that he can do that. We know we'll see it at some point during the season, that he's going to go on some 50, 60-yard run, and that he's elusive and he's fast and all of these things. But every time he's extended a play in camp, he's looking with eyes downfield. And that was something in college that even the evaluators would be like, we wanted to see more of. We want to see, hey, if it's not there, don't tuck it and run. Look to extend plays. He didn't throw as much on the run, and he's been doing it and doing it very well so far. And one of the guys who's on the receiving end of maybe the best player of camp so far today was Jahan Dotson, who talked about Daniel's ability to extend plays and what he's thinking about when Jaden rolls out of the pocket today after training camp.
Get open. Find a way, because he can buy a lot of time with his legs. Whether that's running, picking up a block, or creating the second play through the air. I know he can buy time because he has the talent to do so, and he has the arm capability to make any throw on the field. So just trying to find a way to get open, using all that energy to create that second play and get open so I can make a big play for the team.
For sure, and boy did he today. One of the best plays of camp so far. Daniels rolls to his right and just has to layer a throw. Like, it had to get up over a defender and get back down to Dotson. Dotson didn't have any room to extend for it. It's not like he had gone up and got it. It needed to hit him, I guess not between the numbers because Jahan wears single digit, but it needed to hit him on the one. And he did. It hit him right where it needed to as he toe tapped the sideline. Just tremendous stuff from both Daniels and Dotson, who had his absolute best day at camp so far. Multiple catches, multiple big plays, and you start to really find the rhythm for what Jahan Dotson is going to be in this offense here on day 6 of training camp. And the guy who's coordinating it is the focus of number 2.
Number 2.
The big plays, the vertical passing game. You see it today, not just with Jaden Daniels. Marcus Mariota had a big one today. Jeff Driscoll has some good downfield stuff. There is a play, I'll tell you one of the plays of the day, actually. Sam Hartman had a run to Dax Milne of a couple plays in a row. But there is one where the defense shows pressure, bails out. Sam sees right through the disguise, realizes it's cover 2, and there's what they call the honey hole in cover 2, this spot that's like 15 to 20 yards on the sideline that's behind the corner, because in cover 2, your corner is going to play up near the line of scrimmage, and that cover 2 safety is going to come over. So if you can squeeze it over that corner under the safety, it's called the honey hole. And Sam Hartman just sidearm ripped on the move a hole shot to Dax Milne. That was crazy good throw. And so you're seeing the quarterbacks have this clear vision and their ability to make big plays and get vertical, something this team struggled mightily to do last year. Dotson a part of both offenses, so what is he seeing from Cliff Kingsbury and his ability to create shots down the field?
It's crazy. I was just having this conversation with Forbes the other day, and I was saying, like, the early days in camp kind of tailor the defense a little bit because, every day we're installing and, we're getting to stretch the field more and more and more each and every day. And you guys got to see that today. We were hitting on a lot of go balls, stretching the field a little bit. And that's really what this offense is about, getting our playmakers in space, letting us do what we do best. So you guys got to see that on full display today. But, it's kind of just the start of it. We're looking to do that more and more each and every day and kind of create these explosives for the offense.
The basic tenet of what they try to do, and this is what any offense is trying to do, is like push vertically, create space horizontally. And sometimes it's let's stretch horizontally and see if we can sneak someone vertically. And that's some of your differences between your air raids, your West Coasts, your air Coryells, whatever. But this offense does such a great job of being like, we're going to push you vertically. And if you match it, you are then going to leave space for our other guys. And you saw that in one of the big red zone plays that they had, the 2-minute high red situation they had at the end of practice where they pushed some guys vertically, snuck Jahan in underneath, and he gets a huge chunk of yards at the sideline. But the alternative is you kind of cheat up on that and you leave space for the routes over the top. And so there's, eventually human nature is going to give in unless you have a super disciplined defense that is always just going to either have the spectacular individuals to match the vertical stuff without a lot of help, or your help always stays high. You're naturally going to leave more space underneath. And so it is really fun to watch Cliff operate, really fun to watch him put the defense in conflict. And I'm sure as camp goes on, the defense is going to figure some of this stuff out a little bit more, seeing it every day, and they'll look better, and they're also definitely a little unsure of some of the coverages and things they're doing as they get through their installs. And so it's harder to play with the confidence. It's a little easier offensively to get ahead because you're the one dictating. Defensively, you're trying new stuff, but you're also inherently reacting to the offense. You are, after all, on defense. And so I think that is going to be fun to watch balance out over the rest of camp and to watch the defense start to do it. But I will say the defense today reacted well, even if they gave some stuff up. They got, forced some fumbles, were punching balls out. So it was a fun day where the offense won the practice, but that's how it was designed to be structurally and kind of where each side of the ball is in their installs. And Cliff is definitely showing off his offensive mind in ways that we have not seen before, even when he was back in Arizona. And that offense was fairly productive for a lot of years with Kyler Murray at the helm.
Number 3.
One guy that's helping a lot is Bryson Tremaine. The 2-minute drill at the end for the twos today had Tremaine in at receiver, Mariota in at quarterback. And it was pretty disastrous to start. Had some penalties, balls going to the ground. All of a sudden, their back's against the wall. They dial up something vertical, and Mariota throws it up to Tremaine, who just goes and gets it. And that is just a couple of minutes after Tremaine made what might be the catch of camp. Full layout on a go ball, just comes crashing down to the ground. And he won on the route so significantly that he was able to get up and run after the catch. He is having a tremendous camp for the second straight year. And I think with this staff and what they look for personnel-wise, I think he's going to make this team. We're going to do a 53-man roster projection tomorrow. I'm telling you right now, I'm putting Bryson Tremaine on. I don't know what else is going to happen. I mean, I know Terry's going to make it. I know, John and Duran are going to make it. I know Jaden's going to make it. So I'll know a lot of stuff. But in terms of how I'm going to make that math work, I don't know yet. I don't know how many receivers I'm going to keep. All I know is that Bryson Tremaine has earned a spot on this team. And he, at 6'4", is the only receiver in the room who's 6'2" or taller. Like, everyone else is 6'1" and underneath. They don't have size in that receiver room. So he brings you something you don't have. He is a very, very good special teams player. He's physical. He blocks. Like, Bryson Tremaine is having just a whale of a camp. And if he can match all that with making plays at receiver on top of just like the idea of him and the special teams value, why wouldn't you want him on? Bryson Tremaine, hats off. Tip to you. You, sir, currently on the 53, although there's a lot of camp to go. All right, we're going to split our pick six in two today. Take a look at some defensive storylines next. Our pick six at 6 continues after this on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. And at 6:30, we will preview two of the biggest matchups tomorrow in the Olympic Games. Right now, though, we continue with our Pick 6 at 6. And we'll do that with number 4.
Number 4.
Number 4. That's what he said. Two guys that I've started to like kind of watch a lot more are Emmanuel Forbes and Mike Sainristil, and it's fun to kind of just hone in on certain matchups. And Forbes is on an island a lot, and he's doing a fairly decent job. I am curious to see when they start getting into more physical, more run game stuff. That's really what's going to make or break his ability to be a starting corner for Dan Quinn. But Forbes just competing his face off. He got by Terry a couple times today, but you'd expect that. He's Terry McLaurin. But I do also think, like, as they continue to evaluate him and try to decide what is Emmanuel Forbes, and both what is he in 2024 and what is he for beyond, how he does against a guy like Terry tells you how comfortable you can be with him on a number one receiver, a la an A.J. Brown, a C.D. Lamb, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, inside, Mike Sainristil is just making plays. And again, he's getting got sometimes because that's life as a nickel, and it's certainly life as a rookie, especially when you're having to go against, say, a Jahan Dotson. But he's also in there making a ton of plays. And I will also say my favorite moment in practice today was from the Commanders' rookie nickel, Mikey Sainristil, who at one point during the 2-minute drill, he's out there with the ones, and it's him, Quan, Percy Butler, Michael Davis, and Emmanuel Forbes. And Davis was out there, by the way. St. Juice has been the starting corner, even though they've rotated those guys a little bit. St. Juice left today early with an injury. But Sainristil, there's motion, and he runs over with, I think it was Jahan who was in motion, and Percy Butler doesn't move the way he's supposed to, and Mike Sainristil is like up in his grill, grabbing him, pushing him, going slot left, slot left, slot left, as in like, hey, the slot receiver just moved to the left. I'm supposed to be here. You need to be over there. And that communication, that confidence, that just it factor that Sainristil has, it's next level, man. And, talking to a couple people who have been around the league and who have talked to other people who coached him at Michigan, et cetera, like, he's just a culture changer. And the kind of thing where, did they need a nickel? Not necessarily. Like, they probably could have kept Quan going there and just gone that way. Obviously, they like Quan at safety, so now they're able to kind of do both, where Quan will play some in the Buffalo, but mostly play at safety. And, you have Sainristil, who, might wind up being one of the better nickels in the league. So they've certainly upgraded their overall secondary. But getting him in as a character guy was like a non-negotiable for Adam Peters. And so it's just fantastic that he's here. Dotson's lined up against both of them, and Jahan was one of the main guys at the podium today. So he was asked about those two in particular, Forbes and Sainristil. Convenient, considering I spent a lot of time watching both of them today.
Yeah, I mean, they're professionals. They're really good players, and I cherish that work each and every day because I think, in my opinion, they're two of the better corners. Going to be two of the better corners in the league. So being able to have that competition every day and not only competing with them, competing with myself, making sure that I make the plays that I should be making, and making the plays that people don't think I'm going to make. That's kind of what I pride myself. Right now, I'm kind of really competing. I'm kind of trying to go out there and push myself each and every. Yeah, getting to work with those guys it's always great.
And Jahan today also had one where I thought this was just an interesting quote later in the presser. He dropped a ball or didn't bring in a ball that was over his shoulder, and he was talking to Terry afterwards about it because Terry's so good at that, and just talking about like, hey, how did you get good at that? And Terry's like, you got to rep it. And so Jahan kind of being aware of the things that he needs to work on, really putting his head down on them. We'll see just how good of a third year he can have after a disappointing sophomore campaign. Elsewhere on defense, though,
number 5,
Jahan Newton. Speaking of second-round picks, he was back in drills today for Washington. First time for the Commanders that they had big number 95 in the teamwork. He didn't take a ton of reps in team, but was out there. Obviously, this is a guy that they have a ton invested in as a second-rounder. They were disappointed, as was he, to learn that he needed another Jones fracture surgery in his other foot, but He's healed extremely well. I think he's ahead of what they initially thought he would be. And Jahan Newton, after participating in team for the first time, was at the podium after practice and talked about what it was like to miss camp in the spring, I should say, after being a guy who practiced through a lot during his time at Illinois, including the injury that could have very easily kept him out for much longer last year.
I've always been a guy that's always practiced no matter what. So missing that practice, it was hard, honestly, but I knew, like I said, I knew what I had to do, get the mental reps in. Like I said, everybody in the building was always encouraging me. John's my locker mate, so always talking to John. He's like, bro, you're going to be all right. He's like, I can't wait for you to get on the field. And just hearing that from John was great encouragement to me because I look up to John. Like I said, he's like a big brother to me. And what he's done on the field, excellent. Like, we all know that. So, like I said, I grew up watching John. So hearing things from him, like, consistently every day, it was always encouraging to me. And DQ, AP always came to check up on me. And I just felt like that meant the most to me. So I knew what I had to do. And that always gave me, like, an extra boost.
It just seems like they have such a great way of knowing how to get the most out of the players by some of the human touches that make people feel like they want to work really hard. And whether it's, making sure that Jahan has John Allen close by and John is empowered to mentor him and bring him along the right ways. What other guys that Johnny Newton mentioned earlier in the press conference were Quan Martin, who he played with at Illinois, Nick Allegretti, who was an Illinois guy as well, and how those guys were super welcoming. And so just the general team camaraderie here to make sure that this kid who was highly touted, dropped in the draft because of a foot situation, then kind of had the double bad luck of the same foot situation on the other foot. Like, his career could have been miserable so far. And listen to him. It hasn't been. He's ready to go, and they're going to get the best out of him because of how they've made sure that he didn't get left behind. And that is a human touch that matters, and it's a great job by everyone from Adam Peters on down into the locker room to make sure that has been Jahan Newton's reality. Last but not least,
number 6.
I entered the day thinking we were going to chat with Bobby Ingram after practice today. He had a situation he had to deal with, and so I do believe the wide receivers coach for the Commanders is going to join us tomorrow on the show on the phone. So very much excited to talk to Bobby. But the reason I wanted to talk to Bobby was because he is one of a few coaches who was a holdover from the previous staff. And there is a ton of player movement. Obviously, they flipped what it will turn out to be probably more than half the roster. I'm anticipating like 30 new players maybe that make the 53, which, by the way, someone brought up the other day the Rivera quote, Anthony, from last year when he were the end of the season when he knew he was getting fired. And I remember when Ron was like, well, when there's 40 players on the roster and Sam Howell's the quarterback and they go to the Super Bowl and win it, they can send me a ring.
Yeah.
He's not going to have 40 players on the roster this year. I don't know if he has 40 players in camp, bro. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Anyway, back to present times. Ingram is a guy who's been around a little bit but was here last year. And there is, for him, especially though, in his room, familiarity. He's got De'Ami Brown, Jahan Dotson, and Terry McLaurin, and a guy like Bryson Tremaine, Mitchell Tinsley. Like, a lot of his room actually wound up staying the same. And so I wanted to ask Dan Quinn what it's been like to work with him, because you don't want to lose the benefits of the familiarity, but you also obviously need to do things differently because that's a room that underachieved last year. And I thought Dan's answer was actually really interesting on multiple levels. Here was DQ before practice.
I was so fortunate, when we had a chance to hire Bobby here. You felt like you knew somebody, and we'd get along, and it was just the ability for him to want to be a part of it with me. I was so impressed. He's an excellent coach and adds a lot of value, not just to the receiver group, but to the DBs. And on this staff, there's not just, I only worry about, my own group of guys. If there's ways to get others better, you do that. And so you'll see he and I talking about returners. You'll see him talking about other players. And so man, have I been impressed by him. And so having the knowledge of what the player's background is, he's able to fast track that a little bit to share some of that insights. But he's a remarkable coach.
One thing that has been consistent and this is actually a question I want to ask Bobby tomorrow, is like in covering the Wizards rebuild and covering these guys, is you don't know what you don't know until you're in the room. And so for Ingram, he's seen these guys practice. Anybody that's a holdover, he has seen them practice the entirety of last year, whether they're in the receiver room or not. And that institutional knowledge, to have that from a guy that they trust and trusted enough to rehire, same thing with like Tavita Pritchard at the quarterback's coach position, that is so valuable to DQ. And it made clear in that answer in a way that I wasn't even thinking about. And so I'm excited to talk to Bobby about, his background, his coaching, some of the things he's changed as he's gotten instructions from Dan Quinn as opposed to Ron Rivera last year. Like that's the same for anybody who changes bosses. But what those conversations are like about non-receivers as well is something I hadn't even thought of. And so really glad that I was able to ask DQ that question this morning and appreciate the insight as always. All right, that's our pick six at 6. 6 biggest storylines from Commanders camp. This one on day 6. They are off tomorrow. Padded practice, presumably on Thursday. And then we'll see what they do on into the weekend. We get back here on the Hoffman Show. We will talk about the U.S. women's national team's match tomorrow with Australia and USA basketball's showdown with the South Sudan in the Olympics. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Again, a reminder to the YouTube audience, we are not disappearing for good on Thursday, but we are disappearing for a little bit as I will be off to the Olympic Games for vacation. And Linnell will be in for the show, which is great. You guys get great camp coverage from Linnell and all the guests that he'll bring on, but it will not stream on YouTube, so make sure that you download the free Odyssey app so you can still listen, or if you are a computer YouTube user, just go to the team980.com/listen, and the show will be there as it always is. All right, tomorrow, 1 p.m., kickoff, U.S. women's national team versus Australia. Australia, by the way, coming off the absolute craziest game of the Olympic soccer tournament so far. A 6-5 win over Zambia. Yes, that is right. A 6-5 win. So you know they have firepower, but you also know that they are susceptible. Barbara Banda for Zambia, a hat trick in that game. I believe she's played 5 Olympic games, and 3 of them she has a hat trick. That's how good of a goal scorer she is. But you have to try to say, what are the opportunities? What are the things that Banda did well? And then can you shore up, obviously, in front of your own goal to make sure that you are not giving up 6 goals if, say, you score 5, as the U.S., who's coming off a 4-goal performance against Germany. And I think this is going to be pretty interesting to see. The U.S. has already secured advancement, and they're probably going to win the group as long as they draw. Or I guess they would definitely win the group as long as they draw. And frankly, they could win the group anyway, depending on score lines and et cetera, because Australia lost earlier and goal differential and the whole deal. But I think the most important thing for the U.S. tomorrow is to get different players on the field and make sure that their key stars who have played so well so far are fresh for the knockout rounds. And this is a tough thing for Emma Hayes to manage because you also want to keep the momentum rolling. You finally had this breakout game. The game against Germany was probably the U.S.'s best singular performance since the World Cup in 2019. So an entire cycle. Olympic Games, World Cups, friendlies, She Believes Cups. They won a couple of She Believes Cups, but they would scrape by in these 1-0, 2-0 wins. And unless they were facing, really, really inferior competition, they weren't putting up 4 goals against anyone. And then lo and behold, they do it against a world power in Germany. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, is the U.S. back? And not that they can't be beaten, not that there aren't other teams who are at their level at this point. The U.S. at a all-time low 5th in the FIFA World Rankings. But if they're playing like that, good luck. The defensive pressure they have, the goal scoring opportunities they created, they were starting to ping the ball around a little bit and really get defenses moving. And then they're so fast and quick on the front line that they're able to break through and get opportunities and obviously converted on a number of those. I mean, you can say that Sophia Smith's second goal was lucky, sure. But they created the pressure to have luck bounce their way. And considering how unlucky Sophia has been as a goal scorer on the international stage, despite her brilliance in NWSL, she was due for that to happen and a ball to bounce off a defender and perfectly into the goal. But tomorrow, it's considering they've already secured advancement, considering they are already moving on, in a tournament that is highly condensed, you have to then basically, to me, rotate the entire roster. I would like to see Lynn Williams starting up front. And I would like to see Trinity Rodman, who has played damn near 90 minutes in every single match of the Emma Hayes era and has played 90 minutes for most of her matches with the Spirit this year, get a freaking break. I know she is 22 years old. I know she has energy out the wazoo, but she is still human, and that is a lot of minutes to toll on her legs, and especially her minutes where she tends to get a lot of fouls committed against her and is beaten up quite a bit. So if you can preserve her, Mallory Swanson, Sophia Smith for the knockout rounds and play, Jenna Neiswanger up front. If you want to move Crystal Dunn from outside back and play her 45 minutes at forward and then figure something else out up top. I would also love to see Croy Bethune get into the game. Jaden Shaw's already been ruled out. Bethune will take her place on the roster because you just don't know. Like, are you going to need that creative force in a knockout game later if Shaw continues to be out and Bethune continues to be on the roster? I still think in the midfield, you probably want one of your veterans there, at least to start. But I would hope that Lindsey Horan, who's constantly managing a knee injury at this point in her career, like I'd hope that she only plays 45 minutes max. But if you want to start maybe Croy Bethune instead of Rose Lavelle, and then let Rose rest the entire game because Rose has had quite an injury history as well. And, you put her and Sam Coffey and Lindsey Horan or Corbin Albert out there and whatever you want to do in the midfield. That would be one option. But the other big thing that I think is interesting to watch in terms of how Emma Hayes rotates this tomorrow is they announced today that Tierna Davidson is out for this game. The starting center back, Gotham FC player in the NWSL, who is one of only 2 true center backs they brought in a formation that the U.S. plays where you play only 2 center backs. Well, now all of a sudden that changes the roster. And so Emma Hayes has 2 options in terms of her alternates. She can either bring in Emily Sams, who is having a heck of a year for Orlando Pride and was the last person called in, and use either Casey Kruger or Emily Sonnet to start and then have that extra depth on the outside as an outside back. Or what I would love to see, and part of this I fully admit is personal bias, but I actually also think this is the best thing to do for the team, is just play Sonnet as a center back. Keep Casey as a potential swing piece. If you need to move her inside and you want to rest Naomi Girma or Sonnet, that's fine. But I would have her playing outside back because I think she might be needed at outside back later in this tournament, and I want her to feel good at that spot and stay out there if I can. And I would bring in Hal Hirschfeld, who is also from the Spirit, of course, rookie, having a sensational season, someone who's been on the show with us here before, and have her play as the defensive midfielder, and just Emily Sonnet, who's your backup defensive midfielder and won a championship playing center back for the Spirit, slide her back to center back. So I would love to see that tomorrow, and you very well might. You might see Croy Bethune and Hal Hirschfeld on the field tomorrow, and I would actually kind of love to see them together because we know they have that chemistry. Like, let's get those 2 and Haran out there with Jenna Niswanger up front and Lynn Williams and whoever else you want to put. If you want to put Trin out there for 45 minutes and then get her some rest in the second half and get the Spirit trio out there and see what kind of magic you can create. Put Casey Kruger out there too. Sure, let's have 4 Spirit players start tomorrow. But getting that squad rotation would be really great, and making sure that the players that you need to be fresh and healthy for the knockout rounds are fresh and healthy. And we'll see, if the U.S. one, how Emma Hayes handles it, and 2, if the U.S. can keep the momentum and the good vibes rolling after that 4-1 win over Germany as they sit atop of Group B in the Olympics. Give some quick thoughts on USA basketball's matchup with the South Sudan tomorrow, as well as the best thing from the show today and real things real people said into real microphones to wrap up the show next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app. And as we wrap up here, Anthony, we are looking ahead to a hell of a sports day tomorrow. 1 o'clock, the game we just talked about, U.S. Women's National Team against Australia. Good day. And then, as soon as that game wraps, Ant, because soccer games, I don't know if you know this, they take basically exactly 2 hours. At 3 o'clock, you got USA Basketball versus South Sudan, who, if you remember, if you put your old thinking cap back on, your remembering hat, you'll remember that the South Sudan gave the USA fits in their final tune-up game. Like, that was the game that LeBron James had to play, superhero at the end. And LeBron kind of had to play superhero along with, his sidekicks, Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, in game 1 of the Olympic tournament for Steve Kerr's crew. But I'm very curious to see how this goes second time around, because the USA is not going to take them lightly. It's like, oh, they think they can play with us. Cue up Kendrick. They not like us. And off they'll go. But I did see something earlier today that I thought was interesting and kind of correct. There was a story in The Athletic that said, Steve Kerr's biggest job, ironically, to kind of maximize the USA and the rest of this tournament, and is to get Steph Curry going. Like, Steph Curry's coach needs to get Steph Curry going. And I wonder if that is an emphasis at all, on top of everything else that's going to be interesting that we'll be breaking down tomorrow in terms of the lineups and, who kind of sits out while Jason Tatum is in. Does Tyrese Halliburton enter the rotation? Because I could definitely see them making a play and be like, what if we played Splash Bros 2.0, USA version? Let's get Halliburton and Curry out there together with the way those guys push the ball. Like, that would be fun as hell. So I definitely think there's a lot of things that could happen, but getting Curry going completely changes the dynamic of any basketball game that Steph Curry is playing in, and playing with Team USA against the South Sudan is absolutely no different, Anthony.
Yeah, they definitely should have been playing through Steph Curry just because of the attention that he draws. And also, if everybody's focusing on the best shooter to ever, shoot a basketball, that leaves so many more opportunities for everybody else to, be effective.
And we saw that, by the way, in the first game. Is like we saw a couple times where Drew Holiday sets a back screen, everyone runs with Curry wide open. So we've seen some of that. But how do you then get the ball to Curry and let him score as opposed to just being a decoy?
Well, hey, look, that's why they pay Steve Kerr the big bucks. That is why they pay him the big bucks.
And he should know better than anyone else. That is, after all, his day job.
Yes. I do think, looking at the second time around, I think the three-point disparity shouldn't be as, off as it was in that first game. We hit 18 against Serbia. We hit 7 against South Sudan last time, and we struggled.
And they hit a ton.
Yeah, they had. I think they doubled us. I think they hit 14.
Yeah, so I would anticipate a more aggressive three-point defense as well as more aggressive shot taking from the three-point line. Kevin Durant certainly can be helpful with that, as he did not play in that first matchup. All right, best thing from the show today, of course, the entire show is available on the podcast feed. Just search The Hoffman Show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, the free Odyssey app, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. But tremendous story that you should also read in the Washington Post by Sam Fortier, our buddy, our pal, who joined us at 5 o'clock on Cornelius Lucas. And I've been trying to ask all the beat reporters this, what's been your favorite conversation from camp so far? And for Sam, it was the one that you're about to hear as he was reporting this story on Big Luke.
I mean, you're really laying this up for me, but I wrote a story on Saturday about Cornelius Lucas. And Cornelius, when he was a kid, when he was 7 years old, his dad drowned. And it was a very traumatic experience for him, obviously. But over the last 2 years, in his words, felt like he had filled himself up enough to pour into others. And so he decided that he was going to host a camp. A lot of players have camps, but he was like, you know what? I should do a swim camp for fatherless boys in his hometown, New Orleans, because not only did I have past trauma with it, New Orleans is below sea level. It floods all the time. This is a survival skill for guys. And Cornelius, has never been in a pool where he's not tall enough where he can, stand up in it. And so he said, confronting that fear and helping these kids confront that fear. And he said there was a big kid at this camp, and Cornelius was the only guy strong enough to hold him up. And so he helped the guy float, and he was like, let's fight this fear together. Trust me, I won't let you drown. And I think it's really important because right now Cornelius is actually preparing to become a father for the first time. He's having a son due in early November. And to me, to hear a person not just go through childhood trauma, but then translate it and really say, hey, I'm going to make kids like me in my hometown not fear the same thing I feared, and also to be doing that to prepare your son. He said, I want my son to swim, and he wants his son to struggle and to fight to float at first. He wants to throw him in the water because he doesn't want him to feel the same fear that he experienced. And so to me, like, that's not really about ball, but that's about, the human condition and fighting to be, better off than when you were a kid. And to honor his father's memory in that way, I thought was really powerful.
Awesome. Nothing to add. Fortier was great. It's 5 o'clock if you want to go back and check it out on the podcast feed. You get skits and bits, you get funny stuff, you get great ball analysis, and you get a story like that. That is, after all, Anthony, the Sam Fortier experience. The experience to end this show every day, real things real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
Where the culture's damn good? Certain teams of the U.S. Olympic, or certain parts of the U.S. Olympic team. I'm trying to be coy, Anthony. I will give the warning real quick. This is very old school radio, but if you are on your way home with plans to watch the USA Gymnastics or the gymnastics team finals tonight, of which the USA is going to compete, and you don't know the result, and you've made it this far, and you don't want to, I'm giving you 5 seconds to change the channel, hopefully to 106.7 The Fan, our sister station. But I'm giving you the warning. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That used to be a huge thing because remember, Anthony, before like the days of Peacock and like the ability to, and 78 NBC channels, if you wanted to watch the Olympics, you had to watch on NBC schedule at night. Mm-hmm. So like before Twitter, before the internet, like that's how we all watched the Olympics together. And I honestly, like, although I know some of the results, I try to avoid some of them during the day to watch at night. But the USA Gymnastics, last warning, for real, did win gold, powered by, of course, Simone Biles, and Allie Raceman, the former gold medalist herself, is a part of the press corps now, which is always fun. And that's extra fun when someone asks a question, and I'm pretty sure that they know the answer. And so every USA Gymnastics team has its own nickname. And so Allie asked Simone what this team's was.
What is your team name?
What's your team name?
I'm not gonna say it. Abbreviate it. Just abbreviate it. F-A. Is it a swear? F. Okay. Around and find out. Oh, yeah.
The easy way is someone who loves this phrase: mess around and find out. Everyone else messed around, found out. It's golden.